This week, I want to give the video treatment to something I covered in my last article, which is the growing subset of paedophile fantasists within the anti-lockdown movement. What is a paedophile fantasist, you ask? Here.
Mate, you guys are here to serve, man. They are killing our children. They are raping our children. They're all pedophiles. Scott Morrison is a convicted pedophile. Convicted. In this country, convicted.
Here's Hoodie. You remember Hoodie from part 1, don't you? You remember this particular filthy porn addict. There's Craig Kelly over to the side of him, milking Hoodie for all he's worth politically, just milking the shit out of him like an anal squirt compilation. You'll remember that Hoodie went into Parliament and he delivered a list of demands to ScoMo's secretary. This is a moment beforehand.
All right, so
with a couple of key people, Craig
if we came out of Parliament House then, or a bit later on, and Scott Morrison made an announcement that mandates were over and borders were open, what would be your reaction? Yeah! Is that the main reason we're here? Yes! Thank you. That's what I'll go with.
So this is a brilliant moment of footage. It really, really is. And it shines a light on a big problem that the anti-lockdown movement has created for itself. You see, the movement definitely wants us to know that it's all about vaccine mandates. The influencers in the vulture political class like UAP, Kelly over there and what have you, would love it if that were true. It'd play better in the press. It'd play better with the Aussie everyman they're all definitely trying to reach. It'd grow the movement like they were doing last year, and so on and so forth. And it's true that most of them mean vaccine mandates with stuff like their Save Our Children placards and chants and shit like that. You know, obviously they're talking about ending mandates for kids, or they're talking about not like schools forcibly jabbing children in a sports hall at the back of the school, which isn't happening. But of course, you know what they do. They make these stories up to scare each other with. So that's what they want to look like they're there for. The only problem is that heaps of them are there for something else too. Heaps of them are there also to stop an elite group of satanic pedophiles, many of whom are apparently politicians. And in fact, a big chunk of them are mainly there for that reason. That's the inconvenient truth, and these people are what I call pedophile fantasists.
They're protecting the pedophiles. They're protecting the pedophile flagpole here. They're standing up protecting the pedophiles.
UN own it. They
They
are the
love
pedophiles. The Freemasons.
I know.
Alright?
Should get rid of that one, darling.
Love pedophiles. Maybe only these ones do. I think the majority are good people. Majority of police officers are good people. But the ones standing under this flagpole, they must love pedophiles. They might be pedophiles themselves, I don't know. Let's just be peaceful though. They're pedophiles. We're going to lock them up eventually. We're going to lock up the pedophiles eventually. We will have our day. We'll have our day.
Kind of wish he'd stop saying pedophiles. But anyway.
So it's the job of the influencer class to pander to this narrative while being careful not to centre it, you know, particularly when the mainstream media cameras are watching. Hoodie and Australia One Party candidate Ricardo Bosi, among many other speakers, but particularly them because they were some of the leading lights of Convoy to Canberra, spent the past couple of weeks alluding to pedophile protecting politicians in their speeches.
Pedophile protecting judges, generals, air marshals, admirals, lawyers are going to be so shit fucking scared they're going to run.
I am cracking under the weight of the responsibility that's put on me. I want to mow the lawn and go fishing. And I want to see people live in peace. And I want to see pedophiles put away. I do.
Now, I said I call these cunts pedophile fantasists. I call them fantasists because we're not actually talking about real pedophiles. We're talking about a list that they manage. They actually invent pedos. How the fuck and when the fuck did that become okay for anyone to do? Well, let's look at the lineage of conspiracies and shitty ideas in Australia that lead to pedophile fantasy. Firstly and most importantly to this subject, there was a now notorious speech that ex-Liberal Senator Bill Heffernan gave in 2015 to a Senate estimates hearing. So in that speech, Bill said that secret police documents name a list of 28 high-profile pedophiles purportedly suppressed from public view by the government.
Extraordinary claims coming out of Canberra tonight, with a former Prime Minister allegedly on a list of suspected pedophiles. Liberal Senator Bill Heffernan, who is pushing for the Child Abuse Royal Commission to include the legal profession, told an explosive Senate hearing he has a police list of 28 prominent suspects.
There's a former Prime Minister on this list, and it is a police document.
This list specifically comes from some sort of a document signed off by a Gary Crook QC, who was the former senior counsel assisting New South Wales Royal Commission into police corruption in the 1990s. Now, what kind of document that was, though, or how much substance there was to it, is anyone's fucking guess. We just don't know. Nevertheless, Bill's speech was a huge rallying cry, a clarion call for conspiracists around Australia and later the world. To this day, you'll hear talk of exposing the 28 all around anti-lockdown protests. Now, mind you though, Bill, and this is the trouble with this, well, one trouble, is not exactly the most reliable narrator. Bill also used faked evidence in 2015 to accuse a justice of the High Court of being a pedo and frequenting a boy brothel, and he later had to retract and apologise for that one. Bill also once pretended to be an ASIO agent. So Bill definitely has bullshit artist tendencies, and therefore he's not, in my view, the most dependable person on this subject, is he? Regardless, it's almost too late to consider that now. The 28 on Bill's list has since become an item of conspiracist folklore. So it's almost a moot point about what degree of embellishing Bill may or may not have done using parliamentary privilege in that speech. But we can assume that there's some sort of a list on some sort of a document signed by some sort of a QC in some sort of a way which is suppressed for some sort of a reason. That is a reasonable enough assumption. And it would be good, now that we've heard about that, to see it, I suppose. Right? Well, about that, updates on this fated list of bills are, for obvious reasons, few and far between. And they mostly come in the form of updates from cookers, which are all lies, so we can't really take them seriously. But we do have a recent tangible update. And surprisingly, it came in the form of a shockingly transparent and honest Malcolm Roberts from One Nation, speaking to cookers in Canberra. Here's what he said on this subject, and it sounds like he actually didn't just talk, but he did some real work on it.
When I first got into the Parliament, which was only second time I got into Parliament was only 3 years ago, I heard about someone, a former senator, who raised a list. So I went and tracked that man down. I have a barrister in my office. I'm not going to tell you his name, I'm sad to say, because he asked me not to. So let me tell you that we went through, a barrister went through a suitcase of his stuff and said it's hideous stuff, but there is not anything there that can be used to prosecute. The 28 names, there's not enough evidence. Having said that, yeah, I know some of you won't like that. Having said that, we are pushing...
You probably notice he got jeered a bit for that, but it is interesting. Malcolm said he's looked at the list and the evidence on hand via a barrister, but it doesn't include enough evidence to prosecute anyone. Righto. Maybe, bear with me here, maybe that's why the names are suppressed. Maybe it's because they're just allegations without any real evidence. Maybe that's the reason for the suppression, because it might unduly affect people's livelihoods and reputations without any actual evidence. I mean, I don't know, but That's all we have to go on, and that would make sense, right? And you know what? Coming from someone from One Nation who obviously wanted to pursue this matter originally, that's why he did so independently, on his own time, it actually feels somewhat trustworthy coming from him, doesn't it? Well, anyway, if you're looking for evidence and information about the Heffernan thing, unfortunately, that's where we come to a dead end. That's it. The facts end there. You, me, nobody knows anything fucking more about it because it's suppressed. But here's the thing. I'm not actually talking about actual pedos, am I? I'm talking about pedophile fantasists of the anti-lockdown movement. I'm talking about tactical pedo inventors.
Pedophile protectors!
It's going to be found liable, guys.
Let's go through an example. Sovereign citizen group Velvet Revolution. Well, they're a group filled up mostly with boomers who like Fed Post and do soft sit rubbish and mostly act like they're going to hang the government. It's really naff and sad seeing a woman in her 50s talk about how she's going to hang all the judges and politicians. It's not true. It's a fantasy, and it just makes you think, I wish, old Shook, that you could be having a more exciting menopause or midlife crisis than this. Do you know what I mean? It's all a bit sad. They spent January visiting police stations to notify the coppers that they were going to arrest lots of big famous people. Showing the coppers these soft-sit bits of paperwork going, oh, we're going to arrest ScoMo. Are you with us? And what were they going to arrest him for? Take a fucking guess. Pedophilia. Their pedo accusations, they hinge on Heffernan's 2015 speech. But Velvet Revolution have taken it a step further, and they've been creative little fried midlife crisis boomers. They have a big placard that they take out in public with many famous names on it, and they say it is the list. Here it is. Here's the list.
Big news today. We are actually, because the government won't release the names of the 28 pedophiles and they don't particularly care about our children, we've decided that we are going to release the names of the 28 pedos. So let me turn this around. Here's our glorious Sarah. So all right, we're going to sit and read through this pretty carefully.
Okay. So that's got 3 out of our last 9 prime ministers on it that I can see. It's got premiers, it's got judges, media figures, you name it. Now let's play a game. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to notice something really extraordinary about this list. Remember, this is meant to be a list of Senator Heffernan's 28 suppressed pedophiles. Think about that. 10 seconds starts now. Did you guess it at home? That's right. They were so excited to make up pedos that they went one over the target. They actually popped in 29. Oh, whoopsie daisy. You know what it's like when you're hopping mad to make up some pedos. But you would think to yourself, hey, look, what's one pedo between friends? Can't we just add in one cheeky little pedo here? Surely that wouldn't make much difference. But oh no, the guys at Revolution didn't stop there.
Roger, Glimpspin, Molly Meldrum.
Oh, Molly.
Houston.
Holy moly guacamole. They've lost all control of themselves and they've gone pedo mad. They've made up another 24 pedos that they had to put on the back of it. Now we've got 53 pedophiles for the price of Senator Bill Heffernan's 28. This is pedophile madness. We're doubling up our pedos here.
Yes.
And justice is coming for you.
Yeah.
We're coming and God is watching you, my God.
Yeah, he is. He is. Well said, Sarah.
Past the depths of hell and we're coming and we're not going to stop coming.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Sarah.
So, this is not Bill's list, is it? No. It's actually pedophile fan fiction. You see why Bill Heffernan's speech is interesting background, but kind of not necessary anymore to this discussion? Because once you're just making up pedos, any context sort of starts to cease to be of any relevance. Now, this is a really hard pill for conspiracists to swallow. So I did my article on this subject, a week or two back. And following that, I had a few pretty tough conversations with pedophile fantasists. Why would you go to great lengths to deny pedophilia may exist in government? These are children you're denying and talking about. You didn't do any credible research. Otherwise you would have realised there's a suppression order protecting 27 politicians and people in power. I didn't deny pedophilia exists anywhere. I said your movement has a propensity to make up pedophiles, which it does. I said your movement has a propensity to make up pedophiles, which it does. Oh my God, that's a gaslight right there. You are denying and saying the anti-vaxxers are making it up. Yes, they are. They make up pedophiles. They do it all the time. In my view, there's enough real ones without these animals making up more to suit their stupid agenda. Please listen to yourself before you go to bed and try to do better. There's a suppression order held in Parliament. No one is making that shit up. Animals? You're so bemeaning. Oh, where do I start? Go fuck yourself. And please do better next time, scum. They seem to have a hard time understanding that making up pedos doesn't actually help any kids. I think this is because they have to misunderstand me in order to retain their own internal sense of integrity. If they understood me, they'd feel like pieces of shit. And they don't want to feel like pieces of shit. They want to feel like info warriors. Now, the champion Australian pedophile fantasist par excellence is Fiona Barnett.
And now I'd like to introduce to you Fiona Barnett, that's Barnett, who is one of the bravest people you will ever have the privilege to meet.
Throughout my childhood, I was a victim of Australia's VIP child sex trafficking ring. For example, I was prostituted to pedophile parties at Parliament House, Canberra, and to an international leader at Fairbairn Military Airport. The people involved in this elite pedophile ring included high-ranking politicians, police and judiciary.
Fiona actually enjoyed a kind of semi-favourable media reception way back in 2015 because she popped up in very public proximity through media appearances and the like to the high-profile Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. But she was just given the time and the space to make some increasingly incredible claims. Massive content warning. What follows is extremely graphic stuff that Fiona says in her own doco, Candy Girl, about horrific child sexual abuse and violence and such. If you're uncomfortable, skip ahead to 21 minutes and 5 seconds. The reason I'm including them is because this woman's contributions to global pedophile conspiracy are immeasurable, and we're never going to hear the end of this shit about Fiona fucking Barnett, so at some point, some poor mug, that's me, just has to do a couple of minutes dirty work, taking the things she actually has said, pointing to it all, and going, I'll fucking come off it, mate. So that's why this is happening in this video. Brace yourself.
I was collected by, those jeeps you see in MASH, on the TV show MASH. Was met by an Asian, recruit named Chan, and apparently he's the only Asian at the time that was at Holsworthy, and he was supposed to be in the reserves. He was a vicious serial killer. The girl that was murdered at the Weir was brought here. We're at the Caltex oil refinery. I was brought here when I was 9 with a group of about 10 children. We were placed in front of one of the factory furnace ovens, and one by one they threw the children in the ovens. The encircled pentagram sign on the Caltex symbol is no accident. There's only one way you become that rich and powerful. Baal, Lucifer, hail Satan, son of the morning, and all the other gods and goddesses, This is a politician who's into necrophilia, and he's often been portrayed as the Undertaker by newspaper cartoonists, because I think people know what he's into. And then Benno has a ceremonial dagger. Bruce Spence had a samurai sword. It was incredibly sharp. He goes along each child, and he has a certain stance about him. Is it that way? Or is it that way? And he slices off the heads of each child. I don't know if he turns or I can't remember what he does, but then he, goes along and, like this, and he goes along and chops off each head. Beasley picks up this head and he shoves it in my face, like this, and there's this decapitated head in my face, and he says, "Take ye, eat." And he made me take a bite out of the face. And then everyone just had an orgy.
A lot of Fiona's claims centre around being pimped out by her family into these, surreal situations. Now, let's get real for a moment. Child abuse is so common in Australia, and it's a fucking tragedy. I'm not here to reduce or to doubt, that. Consequently, hey, I reckon Fiona probably did experience child abuse, like sadly so many kids. All I'm doubting is that Richard Nixon did it in Bohemian Grove.
Nixon assaulted me in Australia when he was over there after the Watergate thing, and then he recommended me to Billy Graham, and as a victim that would be suitable for a Bohemian Grove. Their paedophile Luciferian get together every July, their summer camp. That is nothing but a Luciferian paedophile organisation. They really do murder people there. I saw one adult murder, and and they dress me up as a teddy bear.
The truth about child abuse in Australia is that it overwhelmingly happens in the home. It's your dad or your uncle or your auntie or your family friend coming over. But the truth is, if Fiona told them the tragic reality that may well lie behind her stories, the world's conspiracists would never have given a shit. That shit's too boring for them. No, what they wanted was the all-star celebrity satanic horror movie, and she gave it to them, and that's why she's famous among them. And she is. Australia, you should be proud. You have a conspiracist bullshit artist of global importance in your backyard. What an honour for you. Fiona Barnett is an old warhorse in conspiracy circles, and she has a huge audience. She's similar in that respect to Karen Brewer, who I've talked about quite a bit before on this channel, and who for years has been doing for Freemasons what Fiona does for satanic ritual abuse. That is, amassing like a big audience out of turning out content consistently on the subject.
When do you decide you've had enough of being abused by the Freemason Demorlay network of filth? You tell me, Australia. You tell me when you decide that you're no longer going to aid and abet criminals. Because they're all criminals. Abusing children for decades.
How did the narratives of these two old war horses eventually become so integral, as they seem to be right now, to the anti-lockdown movement? Well, it's simple. The anti-lockdown movement is functionally a bunch of Telegram groups, and in terms of its day-to-day existence. It's always been in practice a series of online hubs for people to trade their various favourite conspiracies. They never have to align or match up. It doesn't matter, It's just the sense of agency that people gain from trading grim fairy tales with each other. But Fiona Barnett and Karen Brewer, as I said, they already come pre-packaged with sizable, experienced follower bases. They didn't just start being cooked in 2020 when the pandemic happened and people got fried a bit. No, they're veteran cookers. So when Barnett and Brewer audiences eventually wade into the anti-lockdown scene here, it followed that their experienced fan bases came in too, waving about the heavy artillery. The pedo stuff was therefore bound to spread with ease. We can't ignore the global influence of the QAnon scene and rhetoric and base over the past few years. However, I don't like calling this stuff QAnon. I think doing that is sloppy, and I think it reminds me of like a Four Corners special or something a bit naff and lefty boomerish, Mind you, I've done a 2-part series on QAnon that I'm still proud of, although I did that back in 2020. A lot's changed since then. But let me tell you why I don't like labelling it as QAnon. Bill's speech, integral to this kind of rhetoric here, happened long before Q even existed. Fiona Barnett was even around even longer, building an Aussie following. Fiona Barnett is actually mentioned in Fall of the Cabal, which a lot of you might not know now, but it was kind of like the first big QAnon documentary. It was like a 10-part early-era Q doco, which was integral in red-pilling many early QAnon nuts all around the world. So I want you to think about that. Early Q content was inspired by our Fiona, not the other way around. In fact, if you know anything about Q mythology, you'll know about the whole adrenochrome drinking thing, that little peccadillo of the cabal. Well, here's Fiona talking about that years, again, before Q existed.
The whole point behind doing the having the woman not drugged and not hypnotised is to pump as much adrenaline through her blood as possible, because these people are addicted to adrenaline, and when they drink the blood, it's the baby's blood. The baby's in distress, so it passes on somehow to the kid.
I just don't think we get to palm off our Australian responsibility onto the funny Seppo spy fantasy just because Australia, in truth, is more than pulling its own weight on pedophile fantasy. We have some of the world's big-time pedophile fantasists and cherished narratives right here at home. What a thing to be proud of. Speaking more broadly, why do people do this shit? What's going on here? Rabble-rousing pedo-hunting shtick is a populist alarm bell of choice with a long lineage. The idea that people are headed for your kids to eat them or drink their blood, that is not QAnon. It predates QAnon by yonks. In fact, it stems back to, what else? Antique anti-Semitism. The story of Jewish blood libel, which is the conspiracy that evil Jews are coming to murder your lovely white Christian children for their blood. That's been around for a very long time. Fiona and Bill's brainworms, they're only heirs to the US-born satanic panic of the 1980s, where all these satanic child abuse rumours kind of used paranoia to weaponise this ultra-Christian audience. Now, I noticed that as the anti-lockdown movement here begins to harness the potential for signalling to fundamentalist Christians, proportionately or accordingly, the evil satanic pedophile narratives begin to gain more traction.
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I proclaim his kingdom authority over this gathering, this place, and these people, and this nation. And with that authority given to all of us by the blood of Christ on the cross at Calvary, I demand that Satan and his evil henchmen leave.
I think that the breakdown of typical societal bonds and communities in what is a pretty isolating modern neoliberal era which is only exacerbated in turn by the problems posed by the isolation of the pandemic itself, that causes people to seek out alternate bonds. And this one sociologist says that instead of communities based on geography and proximity, we now have issue-driven ones. And crime, particularly as you'd imagine ones involving easily identifiable boogeymen that we can all hate, it's a great rallying point. For so many cookers, and you'll notice this if you watch their live streams, the main attraction to join and remain in this movement is the feeling of community. It's become a lifestyle for them. It's community that they're seeking. It's just a shame that what brings so many of them together is inventing evil pedos. But it is easy to rouse incendiary mobs of pissed off people to do really loose stuff if they've got the threat of a pedo hanging before them. And that works all around the world. Chris Hansen's show, To Catch a Predator, was famous for transforming this bloodlust for pedos into a commodifiable form of entertainment.
Could you explain yourself?
I'm sorry. Certainly. I'm sorry.
What's going on here?
Your son IM'd me and he told me to come on over.
Which people then took and ran with into like this blossoming culture in the modern era of digital vigilantism. Some say that advent digital vigilantism is a way of exerting control and power in a context of, perceived breakdown of the state order, stability and security, which is obviously something we've experienced with the pandemic. We can also see and fill what we see as gaps in missing law enforcement. And, I'm part of an anti-fascist network of people who see that we have a duty to the community to do this with certain far-right elements as well, a duty that we think that the justice system and the police aren't and probably shouldn't be relied upon to fulfill. But these people aren't dealing in real enemies like that. They're dealing in invented pedos. Grim pedo fairy tales. They help to confect a sense of order and stability by arranging a common enemy. I mean, even better if you could just get to make that enemy up out of thin air. And, even just change who that enemy is as your political needs change. Because, geez, imagine if you had to go after real pedos. Fuck, that sounds like a massive drag. I mean, it's easier to just make them up, right? The problem for anti-lockdown movement influencers is that now that this shit is out of the box, it's actually creating problems for them. Here's Hoodie, a bit more recently, describing his difficulty trying to shake off the repeated demands to bang on about pedos.
Now, for the last couple of weeks, I've had people telling me to say this and say that. I abhor the abuse of children. I am not thoroughly briefed on all the other stuff that you're talking about, and I will not be used as a tool to do that. And I'm just about stuffed because I'm carrying the weight of everyone else's agenda. And tomorrow will probably be my last rally because I'm sick of being tugged at by people telling me to say this and telling me to say that. I have had my life threatened. Seriously, and I'm done with that.
You recall when last week I showed you Karen Brewer getting a bit mad at him for not having brought up pedos in his list of demands to ScoMo. Well, there you go. This is the consequence. Hoodie's now getting death threats from cookers who are furious that he didn't go into Parliament with pedo demands. I don't really feel sorry for Hoodie, frankly. No, I don't find I have any pity for him for having been craven enough to tell this movement what it wants to hear until eventually it turned around and started telling him stuff he didn't want to hear. You know who I pity in this context? I pity victims of child abuse. And my pity doesn't help them, I guess, no. But I reckon it's probably a more useful starting point for, considering kids' needs than, say, pretending that ScoMo is a pedo. In fact, I can easily think of ways in which inventing fake pedos might even help real-life, boring pedos. Potentially creating a smokescreen for real-world child abuse. I mean, they're not helping anyone. They're not helping kids. I can't think of anything more gratuitous than making up pedos, And if entertaining these shameless fucking germs with their made-up pedo lists lands darlings of the movement like Hoodie in a bit of hot water in the end, getting a few threats, good. You deserve it. It's the least you deserve. I'm delighted. You brought all these people together. You reap what you sow. I hope fear keeps Hoodie awake at night, where his conscience obviously failed to. Quick note before I'm done to any pedophile fantasists watching, please don't DM me to argue with me about this. I've already argued with enough of you cunts. I don't think that arguing with me will alleviate your shame for the deeply tasteless shit that you do. I'll tell you what I think will relieve you of your shame. Stop supporting and enabling pedophile fantasist influencers. Give that a go. That's a way you can sleep soundly at night, not by calling me names in my inbox. Thanks for the support, everyone. If you appreciate the work I do and you want to see me well positioned to be able to do more of it, please chuck us a clam if you've got one at patreon.com/Tom Tanuki. See you next week.
It does.
This is not about mandates anymore.
It does.
It is. That's a small picture. It's way bigger. It's way bigger than that.
One step at a time.
Properly, not by force, but they need to be removed. They need to be exposed. That's what we're talking about.
I know that.